I've been putting off making this video for a while now, but it's finally time that I talk about it because I just don't want to feel like a fraud anymore. A bit of backstory for those unaware. I'm Chase Jameson. I'm a band director. Kinda. I've been a band director for the last 10 years in South Dakota. I've taught everything from beginner band all the way through high school band. And this last year, I quit teaching. Being a music educator was everything I wanted in a career. It's really been the only real job I'd ever had. I met my wife through teaching music. I got to travel the world teaching music. And yeah, this past year, I quit. And in this video, I just want to talk about why. Why would I quit my dream job? And why do I still feel incredibly guilty about it? So just to jump right into it, I am now a full-time YouTuber. I wake up every morning, take my kids to school, come back home, and create content. Being a full-time YouTuber was never my goal. It kind of just happened. A few years back, my wife and I were having financial issues. Even with both of us being full-time educators, granted in one of the worst paying teaching states, having 3 kids, a mortgage, and just life happening kind of caught up to us. It was also around this time that I had created my first teacher worksheet. Originally, I just gave my worksheets out for free until people just kept asking for more and more. So I continued to iterate and create on those worksheets and created a Teacher Pay Teacher page. Mad Music was born. Now, you want to know something kind of silly? In my first month of advertising those worksheets, I made more money on Teacher Pay Teacher than I did teaching that entire month. That couldn't have come at a better time because, like I said, money issues. So unsurprisingly, I started doing more of those worksheets and doing it alongside my teaching, which actually helped my teaching quite a bit. But I also started to make this side income with a hobby, which was kind of great. Now, I never got the same financial success that I did in that 1 month, but having those worksheets out for sale really did save us from some financial troubles. And again, 2 full-time teachers. Now, I do just kind of need to put it out there. Nobody goes into teaching for the money. I don't think I've ever heard anyone growing up go, I'm gonna be a rich teacher. Those words just don't really mesh. Now, being rich is not the goal, but being comfortable is kind of important too. There's this weird thing in education where pretty much every teacher is paid just about the same in a school. You could be one of the best teachers in the district. You could be the head of the state teaching association, putting in tons and tons of extra hours on the side for really no extra pay, and you could be making less than somebody who just started the district because they have a couple extracurriculars. Yes, that did happen. There's just no incentive on performance in teaching, which is kind of weird to think about teaching being like a performance-based thing because you're just trying to help the kids, which is fantastic. But all of that motivation needs to come within the person. And being a band director, you could be hustling your butt off every single day of the year and really no one will probably notice. There's not going to be any test score data that shows you're getting kids better every year, which is good because test score data to measure kids is kind of silly to begin with. In my 10 years of teaching, I think I got maybe 1 meaningful raise, and that was like a huge deal in the state because it was like a big tax increase that everybody was mad about. And basically every other time sitting at the end of the year, we'd be in a meeting where they'd have to explain to us that there really wasn't going to be much budget for pay salary increases for the next year. And again, you don't go into teaching for the money, but when you're not even keeping up with inflation, you're essentially losing money every year by staying in teaching. And speaking of financial incentives, I need to take a second to talk about the microphone I've been using for this entire video. The Mayano PD200W Hybrid Wireless Dynamic Microphone, which is the sponsor for today's video. As you've already heard this far into the video, this microphone is absolutely capable of putting out quality sound. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. You can use it in 3 different ways. Want to use it with USB to plug into your devices? You can. Want to go completely wireless with the included dongle? With up to 60 meters of range and 60 hours of battery life? It can do that too. And yes, for the audio professionals amongst you, it also has XLR output. The mic was created with clarity in mind, with a cardioid pickup pattern in 3 stages of noise cancellation that you can turn off when it's not needed, so you know you're good to go wherever you need to record. Thank you again to Mayano for sponsoring this video. Check out my links in the description if you want to know more. Now, I do plan to talk a little bit more about the YouTube side of things later in the video, but know that I didn't do it just for money. In fact, money was actually a small part of it because the YouTube stuff is kind of scary on that front. Now, something that was kind of a part of it was scheduling. I can't imagine being the person in charge of putting a schedule together for a school, so I absolutely feel for whoever that person is. It must be a nightmare. But the thing is, being on the music side of things, music kind of always gets the shaft when it comes to scheduling. For my first 6 years of teaching, band was up against a study hall. So my kids in band had to decide whether they wanted to be in band or whether they wanted to get their homework done at school. That is a tough sell. For a band director who's trying to grow a program, it's pretty hard to talk kids out of taking time to get all of the myriad amounts of homework they have to do done in school so that they can just be kids at home. Another fun thing about scheduling for a music person, they're just going to kind of throw whatever they need to teach at you, whether or not you want to do it. Now, for me, that happened in a couple different ways. To start with, and something that almost got me out of teaching my first year of teaching, was they made me drive across town to teach a fourth grade general music class because they didn't want to move another teacher from 0.6 something to 0.7 and give her benefits. So instead of actually paying a teacher benefits and things they're deserved, they take one of their classes away and they give it to the new teacher who has no business teaching fourth grade general music. Now, again, I'm a band director. See, even saying I'm a band director makes me feel guilty because I'm not doing it right now. Anyways. So something about me, I teach instruments to people. That's kind of my whole gig. I will teach an instrument to anyone. The moment you put me in front of elementary school kids and have to like clap along and sing nursery rhymes and do all that thing, it was literally my nightmare. I've taught high school choir, totally fine. There's something just about teaching young kids to do anything. It's just not my gig. But because I'm a music educator, I have to be K through 12 certified, which means that they can kind of just throw me wherever they want me, and I just have to do it. Not only that, but as a new teacher my first year, they also made me in charge of an extracurricular that I didn't want to do. That extracurricular was 9 hours a week after school with weekends for competitions. And it was the director of the high school show choir pit. I was actually in that show choir when I was in high school, and it was a kind of a nightmare when I was in it, at least for me. I mean, it's one of those things that you either love it or it's just kind of not your thing. And for me, it wasn't my thing. And the fact that my wife got pregnant that year with our first child, there was not any world in which I spent 9 hours outside of school a week, plus weekends, on top of my actual teaching job. And to put a little pin on the hours quick, I was basically getting like dollars an hour worth of pay for all of the hours I'd have to put in for what they actually paid for that extracurricular, which is a whole thing about extracurriculars. I walked into my administration at the end of the year and I basically said, I am not doing this next year or I'm quitting. And thankfully, they found someone else to pawn off all of those things. Yay. But teaching that fourth grade class, I had to do that once a week and it was on Wednesdays. And I remember waking up on Wednesdays and just dread. Just a feeling of dread, seriously, just knowing that I had to go do that and like prep for it and do all of the things that I just absolutely hated. I did not go to school for that. I went to school to teach instruments, but I had to do it as per contract, duties as assigned. It just nightmare. Now, to fast forward a little bit into the last couple of years, scheduling purpose-wise, I was essentially teaching music about as much as I was not teaching music in my school. They had me teaching multiple study halls every day. So I would do a couple hours of teaching music, and then I would go and sit in a room with a bunch of kids who didn't do homework for, hours, and I would have to try and get them to do that homework, of which I knew nothing about. And again, it's one of those things where I realized that, jobs have things that you don't want to do. There's things in this job that I don't want to do that I have to do. But it's just, I didn't go to school for, 6 years to get my master's degree to go sit in front of a group of kids for 3 hours a day and tell them to get to work. I want to help people create music. That's my passion. That's what I actually want to do. So nobody goes into teaching for the money, but money does matter. Sitting in those meetings at the end of the year every year, where they essentially told us that there was going to be no money for teacher salary increases the next year, which means that we're not even keeping up with inflation and we're actually kind of losing money by continuing being in this profession, is kind of disheartening. On top of that, you have to be told by, politicians that your job isn't really worth paying more money for. And those politicians are actually the only ones who are capable of giving you more money to do your job. Again, I could be the best teacher in the entire world and I'm still going to make the same exact amount of money next year. And like every other teacher in the world, I would have never allowed that to make me a worse teacher to my students, because I do care about what they do and how well they succeed and what they're getting out of it. It takes a special kind of human, I think, to go into a profession where they know that they're purely there because they want to help kids succeed. Otherwise, why would you possibly do it? There's not really a pay incentive. Yeah, you get summers off, but not if you're a band director and you're working marching band. I can count so many band directors who got divorced. It's such a weird thing to think about, but I just know so many that got divorced, and I can only imagine that it's pretty obvious why. I was always very adamant that my family came first. Always. When what that actually kind of meant in my career trajectory is that I wasn't a part of a bunch of committees and I wasn't super active in my state organization. And it's because I wanted to just be able to come home and be with my family. There's a lot of people out there who would make you think that you're not doing enough work because you're not putting extra time unpaid into a bunch of things like that to advocate for your profession. And I'm all for advocating for your profession, but I also want to be a part of my family because they're the most important thing. And I can tell you there was times where I felt guilty about that. And why would you ever feel guilty about putting your family first? It's so tough. Because at a certain point, passion for teaching doesn't help you pay bills anymore. And on the topic of paying bills, figuring out how to make this whole thing financially stable has been a kind of a struggle this past year. The Mad Music worksheet stuff that I had been doing up to that point had started to die down a little bit. So I wanted to create video content to go along with the worksheets. So I went out and I bought an expensive camera, I set it up on a tripod, and I started recording. And then I posted it on YouTube. The first video on this channel is basically just a big advertisement for teacher pay teacher worksheets stuff, which you can find at my website if you want to learn drum set, I guess. But being a full-time teacher and then also trying to have this side hustle going is really difficult, especially if you have a family with 3 children. So the only time that I would ever actually have to record and do my YouTube-y thing was at night after my children went to bed. So at like 7:30 at night, I would go downstairs, set all my stuff up, maybe start recording around 8:30, and then I'd probably be done around like midnight. I'd go to bed and then I'd wake up and I'd teach. Worse yet, recording the videos for YouTube is actually the easy part. Editing YouTube videos takes so long, you guys. It takes so much work. It's great. I love it. It's fun. I get to like make it a piece of art when I'm done with it. Watch my Temu scam video if you want to see the crazy amounts of editing that I've done. But finding the time to tape and edit and do all of the other things for YouTube is pretty difficult when you're running a full-time teaching job and you have a family that you actually want to see. But the weird thing about the YouTube channel is around like Christmas of this last year, I actually started to see some months where I was making more money from YouTube than I was from teaching, which is kind of depressing. 10 years of being a music educator, going to 6 years of college to get my music education degree and master's degree. And within a year of putting content out on the internet, I once again had a couple of months where I was making more money doing my little hobby side hustle than I was actually working my full-time job. Now, I'm never going to complain about the money YouTube stuff. What I'm doing right now is an absolute gift, and it's you guys who make that possible. So while it's like kind of frustrating that I made money doing YouTube versus teaching, it made it kind of hard to justify going to school every day. No, that's not true. it just made the teaching part of it even more of kind of like a kick in the butt of like, why is this so undervalued that some Yahoo could throw a camera up and talk into it and, make as much money as you do doing that, teaching job. And I also don't want to belittle what I've done for the YouTube channel because it has taken a ton of work and passion and, sacrifice and all the other things you could do to make something like this possible. But so did teaching, and to a more so degree. I think about how many hours it took me to actually just get my teaching degree to start doing it. And then I think about how little of the amount of hours I took to, figure out how to edit a video, for example. And the differences are ridiculous. Now, I also have to just point out, this channel would not exist had it not been for me teaching and becoming a musician and all of the things I learned in college and blah. Everything that went into this channel for me is because of the things that I learned in school and the things I learned from teaching. There is no Mad Music YouTube without me having been a teacher for 10 years and, getting the degree to do that. But at the middle of last year, there came a point where I started to get this itch in the back of my head, like, what could I do if I made this a full-time job? Am I essentially leaving a bunch of money and influence and blah on the table for sacrificing my worth to others? That's such a bad way to say that. It sounds so bad. This is where the guilt starts to come in because it makes me feel so selfish to do this when I could be teaching someone, face to face at a school. I feel so incredibly guilty that I've been allowed to be a full-time YouTuber. And just for anybody who's unaware, it's not like I've hit the jackpot of, financial success and I'm just a rich, famous guy who can't walk down the street. This channel is so unstable and the money of it is unstable. I can remember specific times in September or October of this year where I would go to bed and I would just lay there and not be able to fall asleep because I was so incredibly stressed about not being able to be financially okay because of what I'm doing now. And to back up for a second, the only reason this has been possible is because of my wife. Not just because of her support and love and all of the things that I, probably take for granted, but because she wanted a teaching change too. A little more backstory. Me and my wife taught together in our last school. I was the band director and she taught choir and elementary music. Thank God I didn't have to do that. This last year, because of scheduling issues, my wife wanted to change jobs. Of course, me doing this whole YouTube thing kind of led us to this decision. I could pursue the YouTube stuff and see if I can actually make something out of it, and she could change districts. So that's what we did. It's the reason why this background is completely different from the videos that I started this channel. We completely changed towns. She got a new teaching job. We got a new house and all of the things that go along with it. It kind of came to the point where even if I had wanted to keep teaching, I would have been forcing her to stay in an old job that she didn't really want anymore, just so that we could be teaching together. If you teach and you're married to a teacher, it becomes pretty hard to find a school where you can both teach together, especially if you're both music teachers, because there's essentially only one of your job in any district. So for her to be able to change jobs and get into a better situation, I was going to have to move along with her, and I just kind of took that jump to see if I could make YouTube work. And I will tell you that it is stressful. Striking it out on your own, without a salary, without any guarantee, with no essentially safety net, except for, family. Props to my parents, actually, for helping us out a little bit with the move. It's hard. I feel like we are in a very difficult financial time as a species. So now that I'm doing this, by myself YouTube-y thing where all of my income is tied to whether or not my next video does well, or whether or not a sponsor still wants to be part of the channel, or whether or not anyone signs up for my Patreon, which hasn't really happened. It's stressful. But obviously, there's going to be stress in any position. And something that has me very excited is that for the first time since, becoming a teacher, there actually is some incentive for me to push myself a little bit. For the first time, I'm kind of in charge of my own destiny a little bit, which again can be scary, but it's also very freeing. I don't have to feel bad as a person if the government decides that I don't deserve any more money next year. Everything that's tied to this channel, to YouTube, to Mad Music, it's me. Which is it's crazy. I'm sitting in a room by myself right now, talking into a camera lens, and it's just me. And I will tell you that it is lonely. It is lonely, but it's worth the freedom. And it's worth trying. I'm not even saying I'll never go back into teaching because there's a very good chance that I will. I'm still actually teaching at my local school. I've subbed there to help out the band director. I helped them through the marching band season with the drumline, and I'm now helping with the winter drumline. But that is now the hobby, and this is now the passion. And I feel like I finally get to be an artist again for myself and not for others, which again, it goes back to that guilt of feeling like I'm being selfish. Like, how dare I work for me and not sacrifice myself for others? Because I know that that is a good thing to do. I know it's good to be a teacher. I know that it's a good feeling, and you're being a good person by being an educator, and I'm not doing that anymore. I can only hope that my YouTube channel can bring some amount of joy, and I hope that it maybe matters to some people out there. Maybe I talk somebody into taking up an instrument again, or maybe I, you just like going home and pulling up a Mad Music video to watch a dumb, cheap instrument. I hope that it's not just for me. I guess this would be as good of a point as any to, again, just thank you guys. Thank you for watching this video. I feel very lucky to have anybody that cares to watch the video and sit through advertisements and, help me to create Mad Music. So thank you guys. I hope that I can start to wake up in the morning and feel the guilt subside for not driving off to a school, but it's tough. It is tough. I can tell you there is some regret, and it's not regret necessarily because I wouldn't change it, but I miss my old students. I miss you guys. Oh, here, I had them all sign a trombone when I left the end of last year. So I've had this in pretty much every single video I've taken since. These kids were awesome. My wife actually misses them too, like dearly. You guys made it harder than anything else to do what we did. And I know my wife feels the same way too. I have this section titled, So it's funny, if I'm not a teacher, what am I? Like, my whole channel is based around me being a band director. So if I'm not a band director anymore, what am I? The question comes up when you talk to people or meet someone for the first time. What do you do for a living? And it's so weird to have to say, I'm a full-time YouTuber, because that can mean so many different things. I feel embarrassment, actually, when I say that. It just seems so, I don't know, little, I guess. And there's something to be said about being an educator and being able to be proud of your profession, whether or not people actually treat and respect you with the level of respect that you deserve. You can feel inside that you are doing something important and you're sacrificing yourself to do it. Telling someone that you're a full-time YouTuber doesn't exactly feel that same itch. but I am proud of it. I'm happy that somewhere out there, someone can find enjoyment from my ramblings or terrible saxophone playing or what have you. And I hope I'm not letting anyone down who's watching this by not teaching right now. I don't want to be a sellout, but I also want to be able to support my family and do something that I'm passionate about. And creating this content kind of scratches that itch. I guess in closing, I mean, that's the video, I guess. I'm sorry that I'm not a band director. So to try and end on a more positive note, I don't know what we'd be doing right now without the channel. My wife might have still been stuck in her job that she didn't want to do with a really terrible schedule. We might still be in financial trouble because, again, it's not like our salary went up since we did have financial trouble the first time. Kids only get more expensive. Thankfully, we're out of diapers, though. Again, I just want to reiterate, thank you guys for watching. I hope you realize what it means to me, just you being a part of this. I will never take for granted there are real people out there that watch my stuff. And another quick thank you to all of the supporters of the channel, whether it be sponsors, Sweetwater, who has probably at this point given me way more support than I deserve. Thank you to my parents, again, who have done so much for us. Thank you to my Patreon members, who are few but strong, for helping out with the channel. Quitting teaching was never the plan, but I'm excited to see what comes next. Thanks.